Siem, the Nashelicha, Siem Nashalakwa, it's new Iquanis Giat, Moxane, Tia Elton, Aishka Consene, to Tachel at the Elaganokta, Needless Quest, Snes, that the Elaganokta, Uxatnich, Nenu Hilak Sin Quanis Uxatnich. So it's Hanap Thanasne, just a Ethlison at Uxatnich. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to welcome you all to our homelands, Uxatnich. And I'm really happy to be here. So Hilaksin Konis Ethl Tia Tang, and I'm really just glad to be here with you all. I was just thinking about what I wanted to share tonight, and just getting to know some of our friends that are going to be sharing. I just wanted to acknowledge you for being willing to come forward and share your story. And I was thinking about that as I was coming, and just felt like I really wanted to lift you guys up. And in my prayers tonight, I'm going to be asking Creator to look after you, to bring you good feelings and to bring you good medicine as you take the stage and you start to proclaim your truth and your story. And I think that's something that's amazing about this opportunity, is that we get to hear from these individuals, and I think the power of that, the power of connection, is something that is so amazing. And so I just want to share that, and so yeah, I'll say a prayer, and then I'll also sing us a song. It's been my teachings that when we say a prayer, we also sing, and so stay tuned. Siem na kwakacha thitha siem Aishka siem at the Chawas Skoichel at the Enoch Susli La Kuche Itlak Silang at the Ice Napanak and to Stet Atnako Akelts to Quanta Mox Jelicha. Quam the Squela Quinsa Mokte ia. Stel new tauch, lequa tauch. Stel new tauch at an sach li geld siem, Aishka na kwachacha, consla leitlang at stiwiel. Asiem, Aishka.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Olson, and welcome to the 6th iteration of the Connection Project. I'm so excited for tonight because the work of the folks who not only have organized, supported, fundraised, but prepared their own stories and lead up to tonight has been such an honor for me and all those involved. But it can't happen without an audience, and so one of the things I just wanted to talk about in opening up this evening was each year we sort of have a theme. Sometimes I share that with folks, other times it's just sort of something that's carried by the presenters through their rehearsal process. But somebody asked me the other day, what is your theme for this year? And I said, well, it didn't really show up until last night before I was falling asleep. And one of the things that I think is so important about being on a healing journey and working through understanding mental health, because it is invisible in nature, is that there's a piece of us that I have discovered shows up for folks who are really deep in that struggle, or who are working sort of in that darkness, because it's a very individual journey. One that is supported by connection and the love of community and the support of friends and family and many other facets of society that are put in place. And the piece that I feel that isn't often acknowledged is this sense of worthiness and the need for you to feel like you're seen. And a big part of that is left out when we talk about mental health, because when we're not self-validating what we're experiencing because we haven't been taught or we don't know how, it really lends to that isolation feeling and sort of a sense of hardship, or that you are alone. And it's something that we can get from others, but ultimately it comes down to our own understanding of that. Because we are here, we are valid and we are worthy. And if we can start to talk about how much that matters in our day-to-day lives and how we communicate with others and how we share the truth of what we're going through, the more we are honoring that part of us who likes to stay hidden because it feels safer. But one of the things I found in sharing my story 6 years ago was that I was able to leave a lot of it on the stage and reinvent myself, that we get to wake up each day and to be who we are in that moment, and to consistently be working on our own healing journey and who we want to show up as. And it's not always afforded to us, so we have to do that work, in a sense, within. And so my offer to you tonight is to be here with you, see yourself in the presenters, take on a part that becomes activated in you tonight to allow for maybe a deeper healing of a wound that may be inside of you. When we understand who we are and we cultivate that sense of belonging and understanding and really figuring out who we are, which definitely is a lifelong journey, I think so much healing can take place. And who we are in the spaces that we are, coming to be in Saanich, to be in this territory, it matters to know who we are so we can show up fully and be working collaboratively here. And so how we understand ourselves in place also matters. And I'm really grateful that the work has been happening here over the last 6 years with this storytelling event that can support all the other good work that's happening out there. There's so many folks that are here tonight that I would love to send individual shout outs to, but I'll come hug you after. Thank you so much to the presenters. You have amazed me, taught me, and I'm really grateful for all of you for the work that you've done in lead up to tonight. So look after yourselves, know that you're loved, and take care.
Anin, my name is Jordan Cook. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I now reside in Coquitlam. My spirit name is SABÉ, and today I've come here to share my story with all of you, my trials and tribulations, and how I landed myself here. I also have a song that I'm going to be sharing. I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you for your time and energy. Tonga Shelaya Waniwa Kiedo yo Tonga Shelaya Waniwa Kiedo yo Waniwa Kiedo Tonka Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Tonka Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Waniwa Kiedo. Tonga Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Tonga Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Waniwa Kiedo. Tonga Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Tonga Shelaya, Waniwa Kiedo yo. Waniwa Kiedo. Which? Okay. Wow, it's amazing to be here. So I've already introduced myself. I'll do it again. My name's Jordan Cook. I come from Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's Treaty Territory 1. My mother's West African. My biological father is Ojibwe. And I got a blend of European in there too. So we'll start off as a youngin'. I have two brothers that I grew up with. You know, we didn't have the brightest relationship. I was going through a lot of abuse. My father left me when I was just a baby. He was scared, you know, obviously had his reasons of doing what he did. And so my mom was a single mother, and she ended up putting out an ad. She put out an ad. She was looking for support, you know, a single mother had a child, male figure left due to whatever reasons. And so she put out an ad. She found my stepdad, and they started building a relationship. Well, me and my stepdad didn't have, you know, the brightest relationship, and there was a lot of tough love that was going on and abuse. So when my brothers came into the picture, I started to continue that cycle of abuse. And, you know, I would bully my brothers and take a lot of the stuff that was going out on them. And eventually I ended up taking that into the streets, and I took it into the school system, and eventually into the prison system. I didn't know how to share my emotions. So standing here today is such an honor, and I feel as though I'm breaking that algorithm. You know, I'm here being vulnerable, And I'm grateful that you guys all have me here. And so what ended up happening was I went to the streets because the streets was safer. And I started seeking for acceptance in the streets and love in the streets. And I joined a gang. I joined a gang very early. You know, I was deceived by the flashy chains and all that stuff, you know. Hip hop had an influence on that too, the music I was listening to. And so what ended up happening was I ended up dropping out of school, and I picked up addictions, and they were pretty heavy addictions. And I started going in and out of the prison system. And it got to the point where I became more comfortable with being inside than being outside on the streets, because that meant that I had to be vulnerable. I had to show who I truly was. You know, I had to fit in with society, and I didn't really know how to do that because I didn't have a positive father figure in my life to show me that. So I was lost, lack of identity, right? So what ended up happening was I ended up moving to a new area, and I continued the cycle, and I was just popping in and out, and it was just easier to be inside. And that continued for a large amount of my life. I got my first pen bit, and I was always into music. Like, it always had a huge influence on my life. And I was like, I think I want to start writing rhymes. I think I'm going to try to channel this pain into something beautiful instead of always being violent and smashing things and breaking things and fighting people. Like, I'm getting tired of this. And I made my first song. It was called So Much Pain. And people were like, wow, man, like, you should stick to it. And that was like one of the first times where I really felt validated for like a gift that I didn't know I had, right? So I was like, wow, I carried on to that, and I kept doing that. And that was my way of venting and, you know, doing that inner work. And, you know, eventually I got out, and I got involved in a love triangle. It was a very toxic relationship. There was a lot going on. I was involved with domestic abuse, you know, addictions, you name it. And it was bad. And it was this vicious cycle. And I was lost. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I ended up getting stabbed 11 times in this love triangle. I almost died. I had to have 2 surgeries. Thank God I'm still here. But at those times, I questioned, like, what is going on? Like, why am I still here? I've lost plenty of bros to the streets, to gang violence, to overdosing, suicide, and I'm still here. Like, why? And I'd ask these questions. At that time, I didn't have a higher power to ask either. Like, I was just like, what's going on, right? Like, I wasn't following any religions or the culture, the indigenous culture and their teachings at that time, but I was just very curious. So I ended up, having my daughter, and that's where I started to contemplate change. And I was like, okay, I think I can get out of this. I don't know how right now, but like, I need to get out of this for my family, for my daughter. Because I was just in so deep, right? And it was tough to find resources when you've never been open to them, right? So what ended up happening was I tried to kill myself. I was trying to run away from my responsibilities. And I ended up crushing 3.5 grams of methamphetamines, and I tried to end my life. But once again, Creator had something different for my life. And so I was in the hospital, and I had a lot of brain damage that was going on from that, and the psychoses were bad. I went into treatment, and I failed because I still had the associates in my life. I was still struggling to let go of those cords, to those belief systems, even just to love myself. And so I ended up going back inside, and I say Creator knocked some sense into me. I ended up getting jumped, and my brain was bleeding. I was in the hospital, and I was there for like a week, and they're like, we're gonna have to sit here. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. You might have to go for brain surgery. If it keeps bleeding, we'll see what happens. And I made it through that, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with all the fighting for the wrong reasons. And I was like, I'm gonna start fighting for change, fighting for my life, fighting for my daughter's well-being. And I picked up books. I started reading. I started filling myself with new information. I started, looking into other books of spirituality. I was like, you know what? I'm open to it all, because I wasn't at one time, and that definitely wasn't working for me. So, yeah, I ended up going to the gang, and I said, you know what? I'm done. And a lot of people don't make it out of the gang life, and I'm super grateful that I was able to make it out alive. And I said, I'm doing this for my daughter. I've never done any of you guys wrong. I just hope that I'm able to make it out of this alive. And they're like, yo, do this for your daughter, man. And that was a miracle to me. And eventually I felt a calling to BC. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out to BC. And this is going to be really hard, but I have to do it because I'm leaving all my family behind. I have no supports, nothing. Like, Creator, you're going to be my support. I'm going to follow you, guide me all the way through. And that's what ended up happening. I ended up getting involved in the indigenous culture, and I started to find a little sense of my identity, right? And I picked up the drum, and I started drumming, and I got involved with an elder in there, and I became an elder's helper. I started to pick up the teachings, and I started to participate, and that's what I dedicated my life to. And eventually I got out, and I had one relapse while I was in the halfway house, and I was like, wow, you know what? I gotta get it together here. And I ended up going into like an AA meetings and stuff, and I surrounded myself around people that were practicing sobriety, because you are who you hang with, and you got to be very careful about that, and be wise with who you keep around with your company. So that's what I did, and it was a game changer for me. So this October 17th was my 3 years of sobriety, and yeah, it's beautiful. And it's abundant, man. It just keeps bringing blessings into my life, like even just being here, like I said, probably 20 times already. But so what ended up happening was I just started surrounding myself with a bunch of people, and I started getting more involved in the hip hop, started to write a lot more, because I was like, I think I can make a career out of this. It's okay to dream big. I want to do this. And I just had some beautiful supports. I got involved with a drum group called Sage Hills. Amazing people. Started traveling around, all around BC area and Alberta, and just drumming and sharing our songs, and just being involved in the culture, picking up the medicines, just learning more of those teachings. And then eventually I've landed myself here. I'm going for custody of my daughter now. I'm just moving into a new home in Maple Ridge. I get to do a workshop with my beautiful partner. and we get to change lives, you know? And it's just beings of service. And I'm just here to, let people know, those ones that are struggling in the streets that feel like they can't make it out, you can make it out. It's gonna be painful. You're gonna have to shed some blood, sweat, and tears to do it, but you're more than capable of doing it. And there's people like me that are here to support you on your journey of doing so. And so, yeah, I'm just here to break the algorithm, break the mold. It's okay to be vulnerable. That's been one of my biggest fears my whole life. And now I'm here, shaking in my boots, sharing to all of you. I'm also going to be having a song that I'm going to be sharing with all of you that's very personal. I keep it close to my heart. It's called Go Slow, and that will be at the end. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here.
Good evening. My name is Michele. Thank you for listening to this part of my mental health journey. So my story begins in the spring of 2017. My husband and I are getting ready for an exciting whirlwind trip to Europe. 4 days in Paris, as much as you can possibly cram in, and 2 weeks in Italy. So we got up every morning at 6 and fell into bed at midnight after a whole day of sightseeing, drinking, and enjoying some of the best food in the world. Part of my backstory is I suffer from migraines, so I was conscious of that, but also taking care of those while I was traveling. A couple days before we embarked on our home journey, I started not to feel so great, but I put that up to that drinking and eating and all that other stuff I told you we were doing. So pushed through. We got home on a Saturday night. I wasn't feeling great at all, but Sunday, spent the day in bed and off to work on Monday, like we often do with trips like that. So the week progressed, and I really did not feel very well at all. I was at work, my head was really hurting. My migraines would typically come and go. I could take medication and they would leave, but they weren't doing that. They were piling up on top of each other. So by the time Friday came around, I was really looking forward to the weekend. I got home from work, started not to feel well, told my husband I needed to lay down. My headache grew, and I was used to that with migraines. That wasn't unusual. I took one of my triptans, and I took another one. Nothing was working. By about 10 o'clock that night, I wanted to jump in front of a train. I had experienced pain before, but nothing like this. So off to the emergency room we went. We had done that before in the past a couple of times. And they have this wonderful cocktail that they give migraineurs. And it's got all kinds of good little things, and they IV drip you and they hydrate you up. So that's what they did with me. I got out of the emergency room about 4 o'clock. It worked. And I went home and it seemed like everything was going to be okay. It happened again the next night, though, and then the next night, and the next night. For 2 weeks, I had indescribable pain. I was at my doctor's office every day. My husband took time off. She was giving me opiates, so I was getting Oxycontin, Oxyset, Demerol, Tylenol 3s, you name it. She was giving it to me to try to combat this pain that I was having. I was in and out of the emergency room countless times. I got labeled drug seeking. I kept bringing the meds with me, showing them I didn't need their meds. I was getting them from my doctor. What I needed was some kind of relief from this crazy pain. Unfortunately, no one was able to come up with an answer, so we did some CAT scans, we did some MRIs, we did a whole bunch of poking and prodding. We went to a surgeon who wanted to open my head up just in case he could find what was wrong. He didn't really know what was wrong, he just wanted to break open my head, so we moved on from him pretty quick. But seriously, he really just, I don't think it'll work, but we'll give it a try. So this is, we're into July, August now. I've had pain now every day, and we're working on 3 months. And I slowly got worse and worse. My mental health really started to take a downslide come September. By the middle of October, I was bedridden. We had gotten me a hospital bed, which was a great idea. I did Botox, one of the things I was trying to do for those migraines that I was telling you about, those headaches. But unfortunately, what it made me have actually was this horrible circle around my head where I couldn't lay on either side of my head. So we got a hospital bed so I could sit up and try to sleep. But that was the only position I could be in. I couldn't lay on either side of my head. Meanwhile, my head was, of course, ready to explode every day. So come mid-October, I took to my bed, this hospital bed. I think my husband had to take work off. No one could take care of me other than him. And my mental health, it plummeted. I got out of bed when I had to take a shower, which wasn't very often. And I went once a week to my doctor, who was scrambling. I have to bless her. She did everything she humanly possibly could do for me. So she got me into the adult mental health unit clinic. And I was seeing a doctor once a week. They kept giving me antidepressants, trying to think that maybe this would help me. And it didn't. I kept getting sicker and sicker. My friends would come by, rub my feet, try to do what they could do to give me some relief. But really, there was nothing that was going to relieve me. I was in so much pain, both mentally and physically. So come the end of November, I had come to the end of my rope. Remember all those great pills they gave me? Well, I had been hoarding them. So I got them. I got a big glass of water. I sat down on the ground in the third bedroom where we had this medical bed. And Sadie, our little Mexican rescue, had taken to sleeping under the bed to provide me some relief. I could tell she knew there was something not okay. So I sat down next to her with this big, huge glass of water, and you name it, I had it. I had hundreds of pills, hundreds of them. I could have done myself over any numbers of times. So I cracked my first bottle open, and Sadie put her little head on my lap and said, "Michele, you can't do this." I cracked the second bottle open, and she said, you can't do this. There's too many people that count on you. I cracked the third bottle open. I started to pour them in my hand. It was time. I had had enough. And she said, "Michele, you need to go get Ted up. You need to go get him now." And so I did. I made a choice. I made a conscious choice that I wanted to live, but I didn't want to be in pain anymore. And so it was a dichotomy. The only way to be out of the pain was being dead, but I didn't want to be dead because that meant that I would miss all these amazing things in my life. So I got Ted up, and I said, "We need to go to the hospital." So we went to the emergency room not at our local hospital. We went to the mental health clinic and emergency room. I spent a couple days there, and then they got me on the floor. So fast forward 6.5 years, so here I am today. I still am in pain every day. Some days it's an 8, some days it's a 9, some days it's a 5 or a 6, but I'm in pain every single day. But I've learned through everything that I've done, including ketamine courses, psychiatrists, psychologists, friends, gurus, curable apps up the yin-yang, you name it. I have learned some things, and I've learned that being alive is better than being dead. And that has been a really hard lesson for me to learn because the pain has been indescribable. But I know that I have more left in me to give. And so I make the choice every day, even though I'm in pain, to be up and about and do things with my family and with my friends. And I know that my mental health ebbs and flows. And so sometimes I'm really, really depressed. I don't get out of bed for days. And nobody knows. I hide that. My husband and my daughter are usually the only ones that know about that. But I know that there's going to be a better day. And so I hang on. And there's not perfect days anymore. I have perfect moments. I have a perfect hour. I have to just change what I consider being good, right? You know, everybody, you have something. And mine is mental health. I have significant, severe, treatment-resistant depression. Nothing that they've given me has helped. And I have severe migraine. And nothing's really helped for that either, too. So, you know, you do what you can with what you've got. And I've just met some amazing people through this process and through my life. And for the ones that are here, thank you so much for sticking by me. I know it's not easy having someone with mental health in your life. But I thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone. Big breath. I'm Natalie. I'm originally from Scotland, and I'll be quite honest with you, I don't know what accent's going to come out to play tonight. Sometimes I'm Canadian, sometimes I'm Scottish. So let's see where this goes. I have quite a long and turbulent journey, really, but I'm gonna just chat about the path that changed my life forever. I was always told I was too intense, too emotional, too much. It stung, but I guess I never really knew the depth of it. In February of 2014, it was a year anniversary of some severe trauma. Things started to change, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. At first, everything just seemed brighter and happier, and there was more energy, and that energy started seeping into meanings and signs. And when I turned on the radio, the song that I heard was written for me. When I turned on the TV, that show was all about my life. And it became more intense and more intense. I went to the doctor just for a regular prescription refill. I guess she saw something. The intensity grew. The voices in my head got louder and louder. They told me that I, Natalie, had to drive to Nova Scotia, New Scotland, to find a new version of myself. Didn't really quite understand what that meant. Didn't even know where Nova Scotia really was. But okay, we'll do it. So, sold all my belongings. I moved out of my apartment. And with my 2-year-old Chauhan rascal, we moved into my Ford Fiesta and started driving. Yeah, didn't have a road map. Had no idea where I was going. I mean, to be honest, when I first moved to Canada, I didn't even know Vancouver had an island. So for me to make it to Nova Scotia, okay, we'll give it a bash. So I get to the ferry heading over to the mainland, and my cell phone rings. Hello, this is Andrew from Mental Health. Mental health? Yeah, how can I help you? What's wrong? We have a referral here from your doctor. Ah, that doctor that saw something that I didn't. I'm perfectly fine. I'm an angel from God, and I'm going on a mission. I'm sure that went over well. But off I went. I said, I'm fine. I was very polite and said, I'm going to be okay. I've got this. And I got on that ferry and headed to the mainland. By the time I got off the ferry, I was an emotional mess. I was crying, screaming, and I'd lost all hope. But God had a plan. A sign popped up on the road for a town called Hope. And that was my message. And that road trip was filled with those moments, filled with those messages. It filled me with so much hope and so much connection and so much understanding for the human essence and what keeps us together. But I'm not going to glorify psychosis. There was moments where I tried to jump off buildings because I thought I was an angel. There was moments where I almost drowned because I walked into the ocean trying to follow the light. There was moments that was just far too terrifying to recall. And then there was moments of pure bliss. I got to Nova Scotia. I crossed that border with my 2-year-old puppy in my lap, and it was pouring down with rain. But as soon as we stepped out of that car, The clouds broke and a rainbow formed overhead. I bawled my eyes out again, but this time it was because I knew I'd made it. I knew I'd made it to new Natalie. Away from the years of trauma, abuse, self-harm, depression, on the bad days, voice hearing and delusions. And it was time to start the journey back. What was I going to do now with this new life, this new meaning, this new purpose? And so I traveled back and met my best friend on the way home. We got in the car together and I told her all about this magical experience. To which, as you can imagine, she said, I think that's not quite right. And so I pulled out my phone and called Andrew back. He was happy to hear from me, I'm sure. And I went for my first meeting at the mental health clinic. I shared all these stories, the sights, the sounds, the visions that I had seen, none of which were in this reality. I shared the exhilarating moments, and I shared the destructive moments. And he asked if he could walk me over to the emergency room. Once admitted to the hospital, I was told if I tried to leave, the police would bring me back. For someone that thought they were Jesus, that was really hard to swallow. But, okay. Some psychiatric pills, some psychiatrists and psychologists later, I learned that I had bipolar 1 disorder with psychosis, PTSD, and substance use disorder. It hurt to be told all that magic I had seen was an illness. It was a sickness. To find connection, to find human spirit after years of suffering was an illness. And then the icing on top of the cake was they told me, you'll never work again. You'll be on disability for the rest of your life. You'll probably spend more time in hospital than out of hospital. You'll never have a long-term relationship. Don't even think about kids. And perhaps your mum can immigrate from Scotland to be your carer. Cue 3 years of substance use and being completely lost. I didn't have anything to live for. I didn't have any hope. They just told me my life was over because my magic is a sickness. In 2016, I tried to take my life for the 5th time. I landed myself back in the psychiatric ward, and I had an epiphany. I remembered this moment when I was a young girl. A caregiver was abusing me for a number of years. On one night in particular, she fell asleep on the sofa, the way she always did, drunk with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth. This one particular night, I went into the bedroom and hid under the covers, sobbing, wanting to escape. She had these silk duvet covers, and as I lay there, my nails scratched the cover and sparks flew off. Keep in mind, as a young girl, I didn't know what static electricity was. But in that moment, I knew I was magic. I knew I could get through all that pain and suffering that was happening back then. And when I remembered this moment in 2016, sitting in that psychiatric ward, I knew that I was going to get through all this too. And so I started on my recovery journey. And it wasn't always easy. It's going to be going on for the rest of my life, and some days are harder than others, but one thing I do know is that we all have a little bit of magic in us. And we can never stop believing that. That doctor, he didn't know what he was talking about. I have a job. I have 2 jobs. I run 2 organizations. I'm married, guys. That guy didn't know what he was talking about. And we're currently trying to have kids. So if I had have listened to that doctor, life would have got worse, not better. I chose to listen to myself, to my heart. I chose to explore the darkest and latest shades of myself. Because at the end of the day, we all have a color palette. Exploring that color palette will allow us to paint a life beyond our wildest dreams. And so for any moment you feel that that story is written for you, I hope you remember that it's only ever your story to write. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi guys, my name is Jameel. I'm really excited that you guys are here. This means a lot to me that you guys are hearing my story. This is the very first time I've ever told it. And so it's coming out now, and I feel really blessed that you guys are here to listen to it. Ever since I can remember, I always felt different. I was sexually abused as a child by other kids who I went to school with, and I was always told that I was dumb, stupid, and had no worth. In my adolescence, this became very extreme. I was told that I was a stupid Hindu and treated like a piece of garbage. I was barely even allowed to speak in my circle of friends without being told to shut up, you stupid Hindu. My friends would whip pennies at my face so hard that I had welts all over my face and that I was bleeding and ran out of the room crying. This is when I was introduced to my drug of choice, marijuana. I started smoking when I was very young. It became my passion as well as my curse. Marijuana gave me sort of passion and bliss in an otherwise very grim and hard life. So I felt more at ease when I was high. So it was sort of like a social lubricant for me, but as well, it was sort of like a balm for my emotional pain. And marijuana is expensive, and I was really young, so I didn't know how to get, because it seemed like I was more popular when I had marijuana and it impressed certain lady friends and stuff. So I actually began stealing money from my mom and my dad's wallet to get more marijuana. And I also began sneaking out down the bottom door of our house. It was like the basement door, to go out and go to my dealers and get more high. And so, of course, people noticed this. Like, my family wasn't just saying, "Oh, take the money." Like, they were like, really, sort of, what's going on here? So, so they didn't like that. And so it was hard to trust people. Like, I couldn't really trust my friends because they mistreated me. I didn't tell any of my family any of this. I'm kind of the type of person who bottles everything up and doesn't tell anybody. So they didn't really know what was actually going on. So yeah, so basically I just turned towards my drug of choice, which is marijuana, to satisfy all my social needs. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about my father, my dad, because it's really an important part in my story. So my dad was, he was a very loving father, and he was also a very angry father. He would buy us like anything we wanted, like skateboards, snowboards, music equipment, DJ equipment, boats, cars. He was also the type of father who'd scream at a 5-year-old for spilling their orange juice. And so my father was angry, but I knew in my heart that he loved me and my family very fiercely. So fast forward a few years till I was about 16. I went up north to work with my dad in Fort St. John. We drove, and we worked hard. It was, I was 16, summer of grade 11. We drove 16 hours up to Fort St. John to go work. And the first thing my dad says when we get there is, "Jameel, construction workers drink beer." And I was like, okay. So at this point, I was drinking already and stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, sweet. And so we started drinking beer. And we didn't drink a lot. Like, we bought a case. We'd have like 1 or 2 beers a night, which was cool. And then, so we go to our first day. We'd work our first day of work. I'd never worked that hard in my entire life. Like 10-hour shifts, 6-7 days a week. I was only 16. And I've never worked that hard before. My dad cracked the whip. He didn't just let us dilly-dally. So anyways, we finished our first day of work. And then my dad says, "Jameel, it's time to smoke your first joint with your dad." And I was like, okay, sure. And we smoked the joint. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I could trust somebody when I was high. And yeah, so we worked a lot over the following years. I worked with him for about 5-6 years on and off. Fast forward a few years, my dad gets diagnosed with terminal cancer and given a year to live. This was really crushing news to me. And yeah, very difficult. So at the same time, my dad, he wanted to have us in good financial hands, so good financial situation. So he told me and my brother, "You got to go out and finish the project we're working on by yourselves, because you have to be a man now. Your family needs this." And so me and my brother went out and we finished the frickin' project. At the same time, my dad says, well, he wants to leave us with a house that's good. So we had to renovate our house at the same time. Now, this was really difficult because we were working on this project. It was a multi-million-dollar project. And we were renovating the house. And at the same time, my dad's hair was falling out. He was very, very skinny. The cancer was in his digestive tract somewhere. So he couldn't stomach food for very long. So eventually we had to watch him starve to death. And I lost my buddy. I miss him very, very much. Now at this point, I started smoking way too much marijuana. I used that like I always did as a balm for my emotional pain. and things started stacking up inside me. There's more and more pain, more and more pain, more and more pain, and no outlet. That's when I started exhibiting very odd behaviors. I was like very odd mannerisms, very odd beliefs that weren't really grounded in reality. I found out later that I was in psychosis. And then, so I started hearing voices that weren't there. And at the same, and after, around this time, just after my dad passed, I was in psychosis. And I'll talk to you about my best friend for a bit. We were best friends. We went through everything together, high school, parties, women, all that type of thing. We also both were musicians, and we both skateboarded. And he was the only person in my circle of friends who could beat me at what I did. Like, I'd land a trick, they were like, Jameel's the best. And then my friend would land a trick, and they're like, nope, he's the best. Then I'd 360 flip these stairs, and they're like, he's the best. And then he'd 360 flip over the top of the pyramid or do some stairs, and they're like, he's the best. And so it was kind of funny, but soon after my dad passed away, I found out that my best friend had gotten drunk one night and hung himself. That was not easy, especially when my dad had passed away too. And so all this trauma, all this stuff that was overwhelming me to complete. And my family they didn't know this. Because I kept it all inside, and I never told my mom. And so, fast forward a little bit, my mom takes me to the hospital because I was deep psychosis. And I was soon after diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I was becoming delusional in a very dark way. More and more darkness. The voices became very dark. And I was fighting with my family a lot over my using because it was just way too much marijuana. So I flipped out one night at my family, and I ended up in jail. I uttered gruesome death threats to my mom. And so I was in jail, and jail, it was bad. I got beat up multiple times, but the voices kind of kept me company. For some reason, it was a comfort to me to hear those voices because it made me feel not so alone. They were dark though. In jail, I experienced voices that were horrific, malevolent, and terrifying. Terrific, malevolent, dark, evil voices. I also heard benevolent, angelic, and helpful voices. And I believed I could hear other people's thoughts, or I could contact people from far away through telepathy. And then soon after that, I was transported to because I was deemed not criminally responsible due to insanity, so I was shipped to the Forensic Psychiatric Hospital in Coquitlam. And I started wanting to change because the voices were getting way too much. The pain was too much. I just thought, you know what? I gotta change this. I have to work on myself. Now I've been reading a lot of spiritual books and stuff. So I started working, like I was in the hospital, like in the insane asylum. And so there was only one thing I could do, which was work on myself, like my inner self. And so I worked on myself every day, all day, 24, well, not when I was sleeping, but 12/7. And so I worked on myself and worked on myself and worked on myself and worked on myself. And I still do that to this very day. I've been blessed with a really good life afterwards. Not always easy, but good. I know how to tolerate pain. I've done that a lot. But I also have a profound connection with the present moment. And my mind is quiet a lot of the time. Yeah, I feel a lot better today. I think my time's almost up. So, but today I've actually found the beauty. I've gotten through all this stuff, and now I'm over it. I'm done with that stuff. Play a lot of guitar too, which is cool. I think my best friend would be proud about that. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and have a good night. Yeah.
Tansenawach gumaganak. So emotional. Tansenawach gumaganak. Madelaine snakasan. Sakaski squint de gawin. Sakatawakutse nia. Hello, my friends and family. My name is Madelaine. My traditional name is Strong Earth Woman. And I'm originally from northern Saskatchewan in a Métis community called Isla Lacrosse. My family also comes from Kinole Cree First Nation. My journey with mental health started from when I was a baby. I have much gratitude for my mom and dad. They didn't raise me in a way that traditionally it should be done with your parents are at home. And they take care of you and they raise you up. And they tell you how beautiful you are. And they tell you that you're going to be something amazing in your life. And because that didn't happen, I blamed my parents. I blamed them, and I had no idea that they didn't know how to be parents until later in life. My dad is an amazing human being. I'm usually not this emotional. I usually get on many, many stages, and I tell my story. But I do it in a way where I'm like, I'm strong, I stand here, I don't cry anymore, I don't do this. But hearing my friends today and my partner tell their stories really impacted me, and it taught me something today. It taught me that I wanted to become the perfect daughter. Because if I became the perfect daughter, then my parents would love me. And if I became the perfect daughter who was successful, did all the amazing things, catered to them and chased them, that they would come home and that they would give me a home I always dreamed of. As a little girl, I never had a place to live. When I would go to school during the day, I never knew who was going to take care of me after school. I never knew who was going to feed me, who was going to clothe me, who was going to pick the little nits out of my hair, who was going to take care of the little girl who soiled her pants all the time because she was very sad. and had so much trauma and so much fear and just wanted to be loved. I lived in a home where there was a lot of abuse, and I watched it, and I heard it, and I felt it. I watched my mom cry. I watched her scream. I watched my dad struggle, and I felt his emotions. So when I was 12 years old, I had nowhere to go. I went into my stepdad's backyard, and I prayed to the sky, and I said, whoever's out there, can you please tell me what I'm supposed to do? Because I have nowhere to go. And his voice came over and said, you need to leave and not look back. And I remember thinking I made that up. So I grabbed a backpack full of stuff, and I trusted the voice. I went knocking on doors, and I found my mom at her usual house she was at, and I knocked on the door. My mom came to the door. She said, what do you want? And I said, I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. And she said, Wes, get out of here. She's like, go to your friend's house. And I said, is that the last thing you ever want to say to me? And I left. I hitchhiked at 12 years old out of northern Saskatchewan. These people picked me up, and they took me to Alberta. They helped me find my dad. I stayed with my dad for a little while, and he moved me to a place called Mission, BC. I went to Mission. I found my friends at school. I found my street family, and I left my dad just before I turned 13 years old, and I've been raising myself in British Columbia since I was 13. I lived on the streets. I was very resourceful. My friends would go steal food. We would go steal food to make the biggest pot of soup to feed each other. And there was a lot of sexual exploitation for survival that happened in my teenage years. Because I knew what to do to make it to the next day because I wanted to live. I ended up in the foster care system by the time I was 15 because I was living on the streets, and the police picked me up. And they said, you need to be released to an adult. My dad put me in a foster home, and in that foster home, the foster parents bought me Christmas presents. And I remember feeling so happy. And this is where I got off the streets for the first time. And I said, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm going to quit drinking, I'm going to stop doing this stuff. I want something different. So I quit everything at 16 years old. And then I started having these feelings, these things, and I thought I was hallucinating. The crows were like, and I told my foster mom, I said, I think I'm hallucinating. Something's going on. I swear I didn't take drugs. Please don't get mad at me. She said, it's okay. You're having something called anxiety. You're having a panic attack. So she took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have panic disorder, anxiety disorder, severe depression, PTSD, all these things I didn't even know what they were. And I was like, are they not gifts? Do I have a gift? Like, what is going on with me? And they said, no, you need medication for this to suppress it so you don't have it. So I lived with that for 4 years, like severely for 4 years. So much so that I couldn't ride the bus. I would see the bus go by and it would go like this. I couldn't go over bridges. I would be in a vehicle with my dad, and he'd be driving, and I would start screaming. And I would tell him to stop, stop, stop. And I would scream at the top of my lungs. He'd be like, what's wrong with you? I said, I can't go over the bridge. Please don't drive over the bridge. I can't do it. He's like, it's okay. I'm with you. It's your dad. I said, it doesn't matter. I can't make it over the bridge. Just stop and drop me off. I'll walk back. I couldn't go to the town where all this stuff happened. I couldn't go home to see my family. All the trauma that I experienced in my life, I couldn't go to it. I sat in my foster home in a room with a candle and a lamp, and I wrote in a journal. And I wrote, I hate you, you're the worst, you're ugly, you're not worth anything. And I had many, many journals. And I ended up in foster home after foster home because of my anxiety. I went to high school, and in my school, they kicked me out of my class for having a panic attack. And they told me something's wrong with you. It wasn't until I went into a program called Step by Step, where I went in and I had panic attacks, and I threw my papers off the desk, and I kicked the chair, And I would scream, and my teachers would not flinch. They looked at me, and they're like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Pick up your stuff when you're ready." And I'm like, so embarrassed. And the kids in the class would just nod at me. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt like I belonged in a place where I could panic, I could be myself, and nobody's going to tell me something is wrong with me. And because of that class, when I graduated high school, I was 19, I graduated on the honor roll. And that's big. Thank you. That's big for a kid who went through all of that. That was like one of my greatest successes. We got something called Stalo Awards, and I went and I had 4 of them. And I remember holding them and smiling so big and saying, "I'm at the Grammys." You know? I was so proud of myself. From there, life started to get easier. When there was a rainstorm or thunder, I could actually step outside into it because I couldn't step outside in the rain. When people used to open the door, I'd be like, no, I can't go, I can't do it. And they'd be like, "Just go outside, it's just rain, it's just thunder." I said, "You don't understand, I feel it inside my body. I feel the rain, I feel the clouds, I feel the thunder and lightning." I was like, "I can't do it." And then when I left, it started to ease. Now I can drive in storms. Sometimes I still get scared, but it's not as bad. I went to college, into criminology, quickly realized I didn't want to be a police officer. That wasn't for me. And I was like, I want to work in community. So I started working in community, started dancing, and then I got in a severely abusive relationship where I allowed that person to severely beat me up for 4 years. And I stayed with him because he would never leave me. No matter how much abuse came, I was like, he's never going to leave me. He loves me. It's okay. Until one day, he knocked me out. And this guy did steroids, and he punched me in the side of the head, and I thought I was dying. I felt my body shutting down. My legs get weak. I felt myself going to the floor. And I remember thinking, I'm dead. My body's shutting down. And I went to go touch myself to feel, to be like, am I okay? And I went like this, and there was blood all over my hands. And he had busted my head open, and I was bleeding, and it was falling all over me. He dropped me off at emergency and said, "Pick me up when you're done," or "I'll pick you up when you're done. Just give me a call." I went into that emergency room. There was a little girl in there. That little girl said, "Tell me if those stitches hurt." I said, "Okay." I went in, came out. She said, "Did they hurt?" I said, "No." And I lied to her. I went outside Surrey Hospital. The doors opened, and I looked at the sky, and something hit me. And I remembered, I'm that little girl. That little girl is me, the one who hitchhiked from mile across to have a better life. And I'm living the life that my mom lived. I watched that happen to her, and now I became that. I said, I have to change my life. I went to ceremony. I went to something called a Sundance. My dad had been asking me, and I went. And I asked for my traditional name. I said, I'm ready to have my adult name, to be a woman. The name I got was Strong Earth Woman. And I remember telling the elder, "Do you know my boyfriend?" I said, because he said I'm the strongest woman he knew on the earth last week, and you're telling me my name is Strong Earth Woman. And the elder said, "It's okay. I don't know him. What did you learn?" And I thought about it, and I said, no matter how wounded a person is, Creator will always come and find a way to speak through them to give you a message. And I thought I was like, he knows, they're connected. I started to be paranoid. But then I realized I have to change my life. And then from there, I escaped that relationship. I physically had to escape and run. And then for 1 whole year after that, I was in psychosis and severe PTSD. I didn't tell anybody. I was hallucinating and I was hearing voices. I was seeing things crawl up the wall backwards. I was seeing them all over the walls. I could hear them. I couldn't sleep at night. So what I would do is I would stay up all night and sleep during the day. And I would sleep in my friends' cars outside of their work so that I was always with somebody. I thought I was never going to come back from that. And people are like, you're crazy. They use that word all the time. You're crazy. Something's wrong with you. And it took me a year and a half, that this voice, this thing, this entity, whatever it was, that would told me to jump off my balcony. And I remember walking to my balcony and opening the door and standing there, and I was like, I have a name. My name is Strong Earth Woman. I said, this thing can't win. And I remember pushing back and closing that door and stepping backwards, and that thing walked. And then I got a call from that ex-boyfriend, and he said, did you feel it? And I was like, something's wrong with you. So it took me another about 6 months to get out of that psychosis. But what helped me was going to ceremony, continuing to dance. I was 27 years old, and I didn't know what I was good at, because I was living for men, and I was living for other people, and I was living for my dad. I was living to become the perfect daughter, the daughter who dressed nice, the daughter who had nice things. I wanted to have all of that, and I became that. Even today, in my presentation, got my red suit on, my perfect braids, right? My nice earrings, my beads. I was like, I feel like I'm Secret Service here right now. The light's giving me a warning, but I'm gonna keep going for a sec. So I changed my life right there. I made a choice to change my life. I turned 29, I had a miscarriage. Life was going good. I was a youth worker. I was doing good in the community. I was finally finding who Madelaine was, Sukaski Squeal. And then at 31 years old, I found a lump in my right breast. It took them 4 years of a lumpectomy, needles, biopsies, everything. They took it, they tested it. 4 years. The medical system even said, we failed you. On the 4th year, they said, you have a rare type of cancer that we don't know much about, called phylloides cystosarcoma. We have to give you a mastectomy. I walked into the surgery. I was laying on the bed, and they were wheeling me into it, and they said, Miss McCallum, are you ready for us to take your breast? And I remember thinking, whoa, 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 hold on. I said, you're not taking anything from me. I said, I'm giving it to you. I said, you don't get to take that choice away from me. I made that choice. And you know why I made that choice? Because I want to live. I want to live and become Madelaine. And I said, when I do that, we have flesh offerings in our ceremonies. I said, I'm going to look at this like a flesh offering. And when I do that, it's going to open a doorway and a portal in my body physically. When you take that breast or I give that to you, there's going to be a hole there. And that's my doorway for me to receive all the prayers that I've prayed my entire life. And the surgeon was like, okay, Miss McCallum, count down from 10, 9, 8, 7. They didn't care. But I remember I woke up from my surgery, and the first person that was at the end of my bed was my dad. And I remember thinking, it works. It works. My perspective shift works. Out of 17 children, I was the only kid who wasn't adopted or given away. And I lived my whole life thinking something was wrong with me. Why didn't anybody adopt me? Even then, I wanted to become more perfect. But I know now, because of my perspective shift, that I was chosen to be with my parents. I was chosen to be the one who went through that experience, because when my mom was being suffocated, I jumped on her abuser and let his hand go, and she could run. Imagine if I wasn't there that day. I'm my mom's hero. And when my dad was kicked out and sleeping in a car, who was sleeping with him? Me. I was sleeping with my dad. I'm my dad's hero. I no longer think that. I still have the feelings forever, but I have the tools of shifting my perspective. I have the tools to know now that I am enough. I am enough as I am. Madelaine McCallum is enough. Sukaski Squeal is enough. Upste pisamiya pisisimus, little rainbow dancer is enough. I wanted to do something here when after hearing my friends and my partner speak, because I stand in front of you in a presentation of who I am. First, I want to take these high heels off, because we all know they're not comfortable, right? I'm short. But I wanted to take these braids out, these braids that I made with prayer. I wanted to take these out because I presented myself in a way all the time in community that I have to be the put together person. And I have an expectation of myself that I don't cry in front of people, that I'm strong. And what does strong actually mean? Strong means vulnerability. And my perspective actually shifted today, because I always have to present myself in a certain way. Because I'm like, if I do it this way, they're gonna see a successful woman. But if I come with messy hair, greasy hair, they're not gonna think that about me. So what I'm showing you today is the strength of vulnerability. I'm not perfect. I suffer with body dysmorphia from the cancer. I struggle with body dysmorphia about my face. To make it here today, I looked in the mirror so many times before I got here, and I was like, Maddie, you're enough. You're beautiful. You look like your mom. Well, I look more like my dad, but my dad's pretty too. But I want to offer this right now, that it may look like I always have it together, but I don't. But I still show up because my Cookum, my ancestors, are counting on me because they paved the path. My dad and my mom are counting on me, my siblings. People that are watching me, the younger ones, are counting on me just to show up as I am and not show up perfect. I'm enough, and all of you are enough. And I want to thank you for allowing me to do this in this space today. Hi, all my relations.
So I just want to say this song is called Go Slow. It's I'm touching, the subject is mental health, you know, so, and it's just taking that mental health awareness and making something beautiful, you know, taking that energy and transmuting it, taking all that negativity and just molding it into something beautiful. So I'm here to share my gift with all of you. Go slow. Woo! Let's go. Go slow, whoa. Don't worry about tomorrow. We live in the present. Let go what tomorrow's worries and problems you find. Breathe in, breathe out, clear your mind. Oh, look all around, see the signs. Open your heart, feel alive. Oh, living our best life, now here we go. Let go of control, create or run the show. Go slow, oh, into the unknown. One day you blossom like a rose. Beautiful presence, now watch you grow. Go slow, oh, go with the flow. Go slow, oh, don't worry about tomorrow. We live in the present. Let go of tomorrow's worries and problems you find. Breathe in, breathe out, clear your mind. Oh, unlock your greatest potential. Navigate the universe, influential, elemental. My friends, hella mental. Let's rock now and move to the temple. You know who you are. Shoot for the stars. Go slow, oh, don't worry about tomorrow. We live in the present. Let go of tomorrow's worries and problems you find. Breathe in, breathe out, clear your mind. Oh, go slow, oh. 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 Don't worry about tomorrow. We live in the present. Let go of tomorrow's worries and problems you find. Breathe in, breathe out, clear your mind. Oh, go slow, oh. Don't worry about tomorrow. We live in the present. Let go of tomorrow's worries and problems you find. Breathe in, breathe out, clear your mind. Oh, miigwech. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, listening to everybody's story here. We're truly grateful. Go slow. Take it one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 minute at a time.